Well, how's it going, everybody, and welcome back to Project Time Tech. Today I want to talk a little bit about resetting lost and or forgotten Windows passwords. If you're into the vintage PC hobby like I am, then you've likely ran into this scenario yourself, probably on more than one occasion. I've been with a managed services provider for more than 25 years now, and primary role there is end-user IT support. And basically I'm geared towards small businesses and, fixing everything from, broken printers to hypervisors, firewalls, switching, routing, whatever. Anybody who has managed IT in the small business space is going to be a jack of all trades and frankly master of none. But anyway, you run into your share of lost and forgotten Windows passwords. And, I guess over time you kind of develop a system and a kit to kind of help with that. Now in small business, or pretty much any business for that matter, there's typically a Windows domain, and typically workstations are part of that domain. So if a user forgets their password, then it's easily reset, right? Just hop in there and Active Directory users and computers, reset the account, moving on. But there are a few scenarios where that is not the case. A few of those would be in the case where a PC is tombstoned and its account is gone from Active Directory. And usually we have a local password that's set there, that's kind of a last ditch to get me in to reset a password, but it doesn't always mean that, that password is there. It doesn't always mean it was documented. Doesn't always mean it got changed the last time those were updated, whatever. Also, we have instances where the client pulls out a workstation from a closet that's been sitting in there for 17 years or whatever, and they're like, I need to get back in this and get my XYZ off of it. Well, yeah, better know the local admin password for that, or you're sledding up the drive and trying to copy off file by file. Also, a lot of times we'll take over like a new client and a new network that we're not familiar with, and maybe the previous IT administration wasn't as good at documenting as they should be, or in a couple of cases we've taken over networks from their support team was just a guy who passed away. That's happened twice actually, and in both of those instances there was documentation but not 100%, so you're back to password resetting on some stuff. Now the other case, and the most fun one, and the one that we're here to talk about today, is for those of us in the vintage PC hobby who like to get PCs either from e-waste or having them be donated, or we get them from eBay because they're cool. A lot of times those will come with no password. Now, while I don't think it's a good idea to get a PC off of eBay or even e-cycling and load it up and use it, there's a compelling reason, at least in my world, to get into the machine and see what's on the thing. A lot of times on these old workstations, I found the coolest software that has nothing to do with personal data, but it's just cool stuff to have, and you want to just kind of archive some of that stuff off of there. Now, obviously, your best practice is to completely reset Windows when you're done and get back to a clean slate. Don't be messing with other people's data. And that's the case that we have here today. This is a Panasonic ToughPad that I bought off eBay for another project that I'm working on personally. And I bought this thing as a working laptop with a fresh installation of Windows 10. The seller said that it was all reloaded, all cleaned up, all the original ToughBook drivers and services and stuff were added back to the machine, and it was 100% ready to go. Problem is, when I brought the machine up, I'm at an admin screen wanting a password that I don't know. And it's not password, it's not admin, it's not 1234, it's not all the things that you might think it would be, and it's nowhere on the machine. And of course I didn't receive anything in the box from the seller telling me what the password should be. So I sat down and of course sent out an email to him really quick to say, hey man, you kind of didn't send me a password for this machine that I paid probably too much for, that is 100% working. And after I sent it, I got to thinking, I can sit here and wait for a day or two for him to respond to this email, or I can just reset the password, because quite honestly, I can just reset it faster probably than I could ever get him to respond. So that's what we're going to do here today. I'm going to kind of walk you through how I do it, what my steps are, and it's way easier than you think it might be. Now, I shouldn't have to say this, but I feel like I ought to. Don't ever use this software or perform a password reset on any device that you don't own, or any device at least where the owner hasn't asked you to do that for them. Another thing would be, if you do find yourself in the possession of a PC maybe that you've bought or inherited or whatever, and you do choose to password recover it, all that sensitive data on there that's like end user data, get rid of it. Don't rifle through it. That's don't be e-creeping on other people's data. That's kind of it's kind of icky. So anyway, just thought I would throw that out there. So being a computer nerd, you tend to have tools of the trade with you a lot of the times. In my case, I keep this little skinny bag here from Swiss Gear, and pretty much it just carries all the things that I use day to day in it. Now in that bag, I keep a lot of stuff, but the things that are pertinent for today and things that are going to run in this bag pretty much all the time are going to be this: a CDR with the password recovery program that I'm going to show you here in a minute, a USB keychain with Ventoy. If you're not familiar with Ventoy, go out there and Google it. It's for nerds like us. This makes all the difference in the world. Basically, it's a piece of software you install on your machine, you pop this thing in, you run the program, it sets this up to be bootable, and basically you can take a bunch of ISO images and just sling them on this drive. I think there are, I don't know, 4 or 5 ISO images out there right now. When you boot to this, you just get a choice of all your ISO images and you can boot right from them. So for like Windows installations, really handy. For things like, I don't know, running like a PE environment or something like that, really handy. Or password recovery is really handy. The other thing I'm going to keep with me is this drive sled. This is a multi-drive sled, and it is from Fideco. I'll leave a link down at Amazon below for all the things here that I'm going to use in case you care. Anyway, this will do a 3.5 IDE, 2.5 IDE, or SATA drives, and basically allow me to use a USB cable and plug an external drive onto my workstation. Also, I'm going to carry this. This is an external drive enclosure. This one has just got a Samsung 2 terabyte SSD in it. I just keep software and just basic junk on there that I need, media kits, installs, and such. But this also comes in handy because you can pop this SSD out, pull an SSD from my workstation, say that needs a password reset, and pop it in there. And you can caddy up that drive into whatever support machine you're using to reset the password. This is what we're going to be using today. And the reason I'm going to be using that is because this doesn't work. No CD-ROM drive. I've got an external, but who wants to bother with that? This, I tried to boot from it a couple of times, but Windows Secure Boot's turned on and all that garbage. Yeah, you can go turn Secure Boot off and you can make this happen, but there's an easier way. In this case, I'm just going to yank the drive out. I'm going to slap it in here, and we're going to take care of this offline. So let's do this. Let's get the drive out of this and get it put in our sled, and then we'll go over to my workstation and we'll caddy this thing up, and we'll do a password reset on it. I'll show you the utility I use and where to get the utility, because that's going to be important, isn't it? Now, there are some situations where this method will not work, and a couple of them that come to mind would be on a domain controller, because there are no local usernames there, and anytime that there's drive encryption like BitLocker or TrueCrypt, not going to help you there either. Let's grab a screwdriver and pull all these screws out. I think all of them have to come out. Can't remember right off, but I think so. I wonder what this thing has for a hard drive in it. Seller said 256, but I wonder what kind. Is it Chinese? Still got a sticker on it. No, that's a Toshiba. That's a Toshiba drive. That actually may be original. I think Panasonic used a lot of Toshiba drives in these things. So now that we have that out of the way, we'll pop open our enclosure. I like these because they're toolless. There we go. Now we can go to the PC and actually do some work. Okay, so like I was saying earlier, you can't always, you can't always boot from CD because you may not have one. And sometimes booting from USB, well, that doesn't work either. So in those cases, you'll do what I did here. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to hook it up to the machine. I'm going to use VMware Workstation in order to do this. And the reason I'm choosing VMware Workstation is because it just works really, really well for being able to take external drives and attach them and being able to get to those within the virtual platform. I've used pretty much everything. I've used Oracle VirtualBox. I've used I think pretty much everything that's been on the market out there, including Hyper-V and QEMU and everything. This just works best for me. Plus I have it on all my workstations. Anyway, the first thing we're going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and connect my drive up because there's a couple of housekeeping items that's got to happen first. So there's my drive, but the problem is Windows has the drive mounted, and I can't have Windows mount that drive when I intend to use it in VMware Workstation. So let's close this. Let's run into Disk Mangler real quick, and we're going to find that disk. It's disk number 2 there, and it's a 256 gig drive basically. So we're going to right click that, and I'm going to offline it. And at this point, the PC still can access the disk, but Windows doesn't have it mounted. So at this point, let's go and download the utility that you're going to need in order to do this. This is the site that contains the utility I use. It's free. You can download it and use it. I'll try to remember to put this link down in the video description, but if not, it's right up there on the top of the screen. It's worth noting, this is a very old tool. This thing has been around for a long time. I was using this back in the NT 4.0 days. So it'll clear a password on NT Workstation. It'll clear it all the way up to Windows 11. We're about to use it for Windows 10, and it should work fine for that. So anyway, once you get here, what you want to do is you want to scroll down here to how I get it. Password reset CD USB boot disk. You can click that and scroll down toward the bottom. Oh, look at some of this history. 2007 history, earlier history removed. So yeah, this thing is, like I said, quite old. Anyway, under the download option, I usually just get the zip file, this CD 140201.zip. Click that. It'll come down. Apparently I've already downloaded this before at some point. Imagine that. Anyway, it's just an ISO image. So I'm just going to grab this ISO image and I'm just going to sling it out to my desktop, because that's where you keep all important files, right? Desktop or recycle bin. All right. Now out of my desktop, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to rename that and give it something that makes a little more sense rather than CD 140201. We'll do it password reset. That's a little warmer and fuzzier name. All right, at this point we're done with all this, and we can jump into VMware Workstation. Now, here's a caveat with VMware Workstation. If you intend to mount a drive to it, then you need to launch it with administrator privileges. So I'm going to right click, I'm going to run as administrator. Otherwise it'll error out when you try to add the physical disk to it. All right, here we are. So I'm just going to create a brand new workstation. I do this every time. It just takes a couple of seconds. So right click there, new virtual machine. I'm going to use custom because typically everything I do seems to not be mainstream and I have to do custom. So I'm accustomed to custom. Yeah. Anyway, next. For compatibility, I'm going to drop this way back. I mean, like 6, 7, 8 all should work, but we'll just choose 8. This is a very, like I said, old version of a Linux kernel. ISO Linux, I believe. Anyway, it works a lot better with an old version of compatibility of VMware. So next. I'm going to choose an installer disk, and this is basically the ISO that I'm going to be booting from, which can be found out on my desktop here under password reset, the one we just downloaded. So we're going to do next. I'm going to say it's Linux. Sounds great. I'm going to say, I don't know, password reset is going to be the name of the VM. Sounds good. I want to choose one processor, and for RAM, I don't know, 2048. This really isn't that important. Just, don't give it, a terabyte of RAM, something that it's gonna, kernel panic on when it boots. Just, I don't know, something reasonable, gig 2, 3, something like that would work fine. Next, I'm not going to use any networking whatsoever because, frankly, this image doesn't. I don't even think it has networking built into it. It says that I should use LSI logic, which is fine. It also says that it's going to be a SCSI type disk recommended, which is fine. This is the part where we need to make a change. So typically VMware wants to create a brand new virtual disk, and you boot to this ISO you just grabbed and you install it. In this case, I already have a disk that I want to mount at boot time, a physical disk. In fact, the disk that we just plugged in here that came out of our machine. So we'll do next. And it's asking which device. Now, we just looked in Disk Manager and it clearly showed that that was physical drive 2. I encourage you to double check that. And I double check that by running command prompt. So start run cmd. And disk part list disk part. Let's do this part first. Yes, and we'll list disk. Okay, and there we go. We're sure of this. Disk 2 offline. This is definitely our guy. So it's disk 2. So I'll choose physical drive number 2. Entire disk. Next. And password reset is fine for the VMDK file. That's not a problem. This VM isn't going to last long. Let's see. Just for your guys' sanity, I'm going to go to display and I'm going to stretch this because it can be kind of small. So let's power on this virtual machine and let's see what happens to it. So immediately we're met with a boot screen. And the thing about this is everything is going to happen down toward the bottom of the screen and everything's just going to kind of scroll by. So when you do something and you hit enter, everything just kind of moves up a little bit. So you're kind of always looking at the bottom of the screen. So in this case, I don't have anything extra to do. So I'm just going to say boot, enter. Then I'm going to take a sip of coffee. Because it's, it's still before lunchtime. All right. So let's just start with this whole step 1 section up here. Select the disk partition where Windows installation is. The cool thing is it found 5 partitions on this drive. And if we look, partition number 3 is by far and away the biggest partition there. So SDA number 3 is the largest one. That's probably our Windows installation. So we scroll on down a little more and we see possible Windows installations found. SDA 3. So the thing is smart enough to know that, hey, look, SDA 3 really is big and that's probably the one it is. We just figured out the same thing, so it's probably right. So it's asking us which installation we would like to select. Now, if you look up toward the top, it showed SDA 3 being option 3, but down here, it's showing SDA 3 as option number 1. So that's the one you care about. It only gave you one possible Windows installation. It only gave you one possible Windows installation, and that's number 1. So number 1, we are. Enter. So it mounted it. All right, and this is where you're going to start running into some weirdness sometimes with this, and this is a fairly common thing when it comes to putting a drive in a caddy that, especially machines you don't know anything about. Windows is hibernated and it refused to mount. So that's because when we turned off that laptop earlier, we didn't hold the shift key and power it down, whole Windows fast boot thing. So we can try to force it, but I can probably tell you that this isn't going to work. So we're going to hit Y to force, and immediately I get a pop-up here. Physical drive operation failed. The reason that failed is because there is a lock file in place. So this file, or this disk, is read-only. So we're going to have to fix that real quick. So I'm just going to cancel this. The machine is just going to turn off. And I'm going to run back into the command prompt, back into disk part. This is where we're going to clear our read-only down here on disk 2. So I'm going to say attributes of the disk, clear the read-only. How about I select the disk first? Attributes, disk, clear, read-only. Cleared. Now let's exit out of disk part because we should be able to mount that volume just fine now. We'll power this back on and we'll get back to the same point we were earlier. So we'll boot. It's down here checking out number 3, and it still, again, it finds that Windows is probably SDA 3, which is option number 1. So we're going to select 1 down there, just hit enter. It's also going to say again that, hey, by the way, this thing was hibernated. It didn't want to mount. Do you want to force it? This time I should be able to say yes, and now that there's not a lock file in place, or now that it's not read-only, I can hop in there. Okay, so now we're in some meat and potatoes. So down here toward the bottom, select which part of the registry to load. Use predefined choices. So, or list the files with a space as a delimiter. We care about option number 1, the password reset, the SAM database. Number 1, the main interactive menu here, it's loaded up our SAM, and it asks us what we want to do. We want to choose option 1, which is edit user data and passwords. So number 1's already the default choice. We hit enter. It's found some usernames there. Admin, administrator, default account, guest, and the WDAG utility account. If you'll look out to the right, you'll see that all but one of those is disabled/locked, except for the admin account. So the RID of the admin account is 03E9. And if we look down there, it's asking us to enter a user number, RID, or we can press 0 to exit. And it's assuming that 3E9 is the one we want, and it's correct. So we'll just hit enter. Our options here in this menu are to clear it, unlock it, promote it, add a user to a group, remove a user from a group, or quit and go back. In this case, we're going to just blank the password. We're going to get rid of it totally. So option number 1, it thinks we want to quit here, but we actually want to say option 1 for clear blank user password, enter. And if you look a little bit above the edit menu, you're going to see there this user probably has a blank password, which means it's cleared it. At this point, we're pretty much done. We just need to gracefully exit out of it. Don't just close it. So we're going to hit Q to quit. And we're going to Q to quit one more time. And it's going to say that it tells us there that we're going to be asked if there's something to save. And there is. So we hit enter. It says that the SAM database has changed. Do you want to write this file back? Yes. Enter. Edit complete. So basically, if it fails somehow, you can rerun it. It wants to know if you want to do a new run. No, and we're back to a shell. So at this point, we are done with this. We can go ahead and power the machine off because we're finished with it. We can unplug this disk since it's offline anyway. Now let's go put this back in our Panasonic and see if we successfully cleared the password. Gotta love these little toolless cases. They make things so fast and so easy. Now, of course, before we put this completely back together, we're going to test it. Matter of fact, let's get rid of this keyboard here so you guys can see what I see. Hopefully you can see what I see, right? All right, here we go. Powering it on. Sign in. Look at that. No password at all anymore. At this point, we don't have a password on our ToughPad, and we can go in and work with it. And it does look like that indeed it is a fairly original install. There doesn't appear to be anything on this. Yeah. So this is probably a, like the seller said, a clean installation. They just forgot to put the password in. So there we go. That's just a quick and dirty how I reset a Windows password. You know, if I had been recording this whole process would have taken probably about 3 or 4 minutes to do. Basically very, very quick. And the process is the same whether you are caddying up with, you know, this kind of drive or whether you're caddying up with this kind of drive. It's exactly the same. In fact, if you even if you're using the CD or the ISO image to boot from, it's exactly the same. I will say this: sometimes with oddball and way newer hardware, you may try to boot with an ISO, or you may try to boot with the CD-ROM, and you may find that it can't see a disk on board because it just doesn't have the drivers to be able to load up the storage controller. If that happens, you know that you can always yank the drive and go this route. It's not a problem whatsoever. Anyway, guys, appreciate you watching this. I hope you guys got something out of this. You know, if you have any comments, feel free to throw them down there below. If you haven't already subscribed to my channel, guys, I'd really appreciate it. It helps me a ton if you it helps me a ton if you subscribe, helps me a ton if you thumbs up, and it helps me a ton to have comment interaction. This is a fairly new channel for me. I have another channel that handles automotive stuff that's quite a bit bigger than this one, and I'm just trying to get some techie stuff going. And anyway, really would appreciate the help there, guys. But as usual, until next time, thanks for watching.